Today on the show, this scam is a proven fact by multiple people in Hancock County, Maine. We're taking a deep dive into some really concerning claims shared by you, our listener.
Right.
Detailing alleged dirty tricks happening up in Maine. You reached out needing to, well, make sense of some potentially complex and frankly disturbing information.
And that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack these allegations, try to figure out how these supposedly work, and, pull out the most important things to understand.
And the sources we got, they're varied, aren't they? Personal accounts?
Yeah, personal accounts and text files, and also this document laying out alleged dirty tricks that rogue courts in Maine supposedly use. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, what's striking right away, I think, is that we're seeing claims that seem to touch on, well, lots of different ways people interact with the state.
Like what?
From something pretty mundane like paying a fine.
Right.
All the way to, like, deep involvement with family services, CPS, that kind of thing.
And it's that consistency, maybe, seeing similar patterns alleged across different areas.
Exactly, as presented in these sources anyway. It definitely makes you pause and warrants a closer look, for sure.
Okay, so let's kick things off with this first one. It's being called the disappearing ink fine scam.
Disappearing ink.
Okay, yeah, imagine this. You pay a fine in Maine, maybe a traffic ticket, with a money order. You think, okay, done, handled it.
Right, standard procedure.
But the allegation is that the state then just waits for 5 years.
5 years.
5 years, like a bureaucratic ambush predator or something. Then they claim they never got your payment.
Even if you needed that fine paid to, say, get your license back.
Exactly, or register your car. That proof, needing it cleared, supposedly doesn't matter after 5 years pass.
Yeah.
So what's the supposed logic here?
Well, according to these sources, the alleged motivation is pretty cynical. They suggest it targets people described as, and these are the source's words, poor, disabled, or weak suckers. Yeah, people who, maybe wouldn't keep a simple money order receipt safe for 5 whole years.
So it's like setting a trap that takes 5 years to spring.
Sort of a long game bureaucratic trap, yeah. That's the claim.
And this is where the disappearing ink part comes in, and it's quite something.
Okay.
The document we got actually suggests the state's receipts, the ones they give you, use this ink.
Like the kind on, what, supermarket receipts?
Exactly like that. Like Walmart receipts is the comparison used. They supposedly fade, become unreadable within just a few months.
Seriously?
Yeah, one text even joked about needing to store them in the freezer.
Wow, okay.
So even if you did keep the receipt, it might just be a blank piece of paper 5 years later.
A ghost receipt.
Pretty much.
Right.
Like trying to prove you paid with invisible money.
Which, raises a pretty basic question about their own record keeping, doesn't it?
You'd think so.
Shouldn't the state have a reliable way to track payments internally? And then there's the other claim that specific people are targeted.
Right. One account mentioned local men specifically.
Which adds another worrying dimension. Potential abuse of power, perhaps.
If true, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's broaden out this dirty tricks document. It's quite a list.
It really is a whole catalog of alleged misconduct by public officials and these so-called rogue courts in Maine.
And the document says, pretty confidently, that clear evidence of any of these things is a valid complaint.
Though getting clear evidence might be tricky, especially if you're dealing with, allegedly vanishing ink or hidden actions.
Good point. So what jumped out at you from this list? It's long.
Well, a few things definitely stood out. The idea of charging suspects with way more offenses than warranted.
Overcharging. Like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks.
Kinda, yeah. And then the alleged deliberate mishandling or even destroying evidence.
That's not just sloppy. That sounds intentional.
Exactly. Potentially tipping the scales of justice, really.
Yeah.
And allowing witnesses who aren't truthful to testify or pressuring defense witnesses not to.
Yeah, that undermines the whole process, like rigging the game.
Precisely. And if you connect that back to the idea of targeting specific people...
Right. You could see how these alleged tricks could steer a case, regardless of the facts.
And the document also mentions relying on potentially fraudulent forensic experts.
Oh boy.
And exaggerating how strong the evidence is during plea negotiations. It paints a picture of a system, allegedly, maybe more focused on getting convictions than finding truth.
And it doesn't stop there, does it?
Not at all.
Making inflammatory statements to the media. Trying the case publicly first.
Improper statements to the jury. tampering with weak evidence, failing to report prosecutor misconduct.
And gender bias alleged too.
Yes, bias and discrimination towards both men and women are mentioned in that list. It's a real collection of potential ethical and legal no-nos.
What about the claims around lawyers? Those seem particularly bad.
Troubling, yeah. The idea that defense attorneys might falsely tell someone they can't file their own motions.
Or just ignore requests to file motions that could actually help.
Right. That points to a potential breakdown in that really critical lawyer-client relationship.
Right.
Undermines the whole right to a defense.
Leaves the person feeling completely powerless, I imagine.
That seems to be the implication. And there's more. Allegations of lying about showing evidence.
Ignoring requests to talk to court attorneys before trial.
Even inventing past violations that didn't happen.
Making things up. Wow.
And this one, telling police to lose evidence that might help the defense.
That's astonishing, if it's true. Just astonishing.
Then the idea that judges might just automatically deny defense motions without review.
Throws impartiality right out the window.
Yeah. And bringing people into court in restraints, in jail clothes, all for show, as the source puts it.
Undermines the presumption of innocence, surely.
You'd think so. And denying men rescheduling for hearings, which leads to automatic warrants, seems incredibly harsh.
And then, this is wild, using a fake jury foreperson.
I know, right? It sounds like something from a movie plot.
A bad one.
Yeah. And misrepresenting kratom, staging police photos, limiting access to legal materials for inmates, it all paints this picture, according to the sources, of a potentially very unfair system.
Okay, let's move to the next category the source calls general dirtbag tricks. Isn't it? The first assertion here is huge. That just being charged automatically means you're considered guilty.
Which turns the whole legal principle of innocent until proven guilty completely upside down.
Totally. And the claim that court-appointed attorneys are more interested in getting a conviction than, defending their client or finding the truth.
That's a really serious charge against the public defense system, like hiring a bodyguard who secretly works for the other side.
Great analogy. And falsely claiming someone isn't eligible for a jury trial.
Another fundamental right potentially being denied there.
Then it gets weird. Fake psychological evaluations.
Ah, yes, the coloring book evil.
Conducted by caseworkers, allegedly, using a 50-question children's coloring book with super simple questions.
The source claims it's designed so the answers can be twisted any way the court wants.
Like using tea leaves to diagnose a complex illness. It sounds absurd.
And after conviction, this alleged requirement for propaganda therapy and costly counseling.
Why?
Supposedly to make money for the good old boys club, as the source puts it, adding a potential financial motive to the alleged injustice.
And that comparison made.
Yeah.
It's shocking that in Maine, a man driving with a suspended license gets more jail time, allegedly,
than someone convicted of molesting a child.
And the reason given is revenue generation.
That's the claim. A really, really stark accusation about priorities.
In this idea of creating problems on purpose.
And forcing the target group to pay for them, like worthless stickers or papers.
Described as entrapment, it feels incredibly cynical.
And even mandatory lottery ticket sales for stores being called a state scam. Preying on hope, maybe?
Adds another layer to this picture of alleged systemic issues. Okay, now the welfare allegations. This is where the Hancock County claim really comes in.
Right, the so-called welfare scam. The core claim is pretty explosive.
Lay it out.
That women in some Maine counties are allegedly making a living, basically, by having children with multiple different fathers and involving DHHS or CPS.
How does that supposedly work?
The alleged process described is, have a child every 2 or 3 years, different father each time, then name a man to DHHS.
Any man.
Potentially someone random, or maybe someone perceived as poor or vulnerable, the source suggests, and then allegedly with no proof.
He gets hit with a default judgment of paternity.
Yes, his name illegally put on the birth certificate and then pursued relentlessly for child support.
It's like being randomly assigned a huge debt you had nothing to do with.
That's the picture painted.
Yeah.
And the alleged benefit for the woman.
More state money, right?
Bigger state checks, increased food stamps, other government aid for each kid.
And the source claims personal knowledge of this.
Yes, the text claims the writer knows several women in Maine with like 4 to 7 kids, different fathers for each, who own new cars, new homes, all without holding down a traditional job.
Their job being having kids and working the system, according to this source.
That's the allegation, and it even connects this to Maine's demographics.
How so?
suggesting that because Maine has more deaths than births, the state is somehow incentivized to profit from every birth by targeting men in this way.
Wow. That is a really bleak and disturbing theory about state motivation.
It is a very serious claim.
Okay, finally, let's quickly touch on the alleged WIC scam.
WIC, the nutrition program for women, infants, and children.
Right. Source describes posters in doctors' offices offering free baby stuff.
But the claim is it's not actually free, and the formula is GMO.
Correct, on both counts, according to the source. The alleged setup is that women, particularly poor women, sign up.
Maybe not fully understanding the terms.
Allegedly entering a binding contract without realizing it. They get formula, other items, encouraged to take lots. Then later, DHHS supposedly contacts them, asks for the father's name.
And what if she doesn't know for sure?
The source claims they're told to just guess, take a shot in the dark.
Good grief. Like assigning paternity via lottery.
And the alleged consequence for the man named, even if he's not the father.
Let me guess.
A bill. An immediate bill, supposedly 5 times the store price for all the WIC items provided.
5 times.
That's the claim. And if he makes even one payment.
That's seen as admitting guilt.
Allegedly, yes. Leads to his name illegally put on the birth certificate, liable for 18 years of child support, even if the woman moves away.
Wow, that's a terrifying scenario. Is there any way out, according to the source?
The source claims the only potential way is just not paying. For 7 years.
Why 7 years?
Because of federal debt laws, apparently. But Maine's alleged response.
Let me guess. Tanks his credit.
Puts a negative item on his credit report. The advice given in the text is to wait the 7 years, then dispute the debt, threaten legal action.
What a mess.
So, yeah, to wrap it up, we've covered a really wide range of extremely serious allegations from the materials you sent in.
Absolutely. From disappearing ink on fine receipts.
To alleged major misconduct in the courts.
And deep claims of manipulation involving welfare, DHHS, WIC, particularly targeting men, according to these sources.
And we have to stress this again. These are the claims presented in the source material you provided.
That's right. We haven't verified any of this independently. We're reporting on what the sources allege.
Thanks for tuning in to the Despicable Maine Deep Dive podcast. Remember, the United States has been hijacked. So soon, living in the United States will be theft of your life.